The first thing she said was, "Get off my campsite before I call the sheriff." The second thing she did was point a barbecue fork at me like a weapon. The third thing was laugh when I told her the land belonged to me. My name is Nolan Pierce. I was 51 then, and I had spent 27 years surveying property lines across northern Arkansas, but I had never seen anyone rent out land they did not own and threaten the owner with trespassing. The place was Lot 9 at Cedar Hollow Lake, half an acre my father bought in 1981 after 30 years repairing bridges for the state. It had no cabin or dock, just old oaks and pale sand. Dad called it our quiet place. He taught me to survey there when I was 13, and whenever we closed a line, he would tap his notebook and say, "Numbers do not care who is important." Dad had been gone 18 months. My wife Claire had died the winter before him, and that lot was the only place where grief did not feel crowded. That Friday evening, I heard music before I saw the water. 4 tents covered the beach, a trailer sat near the trees, and strangers were cooking and using my father's folding table. Right in the middle stood Marlene Voss, president of the Cedar Hollow Property Association, wearing mirrored sunglasses and the smile of someone used to getting her way. She said the lot looked abandoned, so the association had opened it for camping. I told her my name was on the deed, my taxes were current, and nobody had permission to be there. She tilted her head and said, "Nolan, neglected land creates community problems." I looked past her and saw my father's dented chair shoved behind firewood. Something in me went cold, but I did not raise my voice. I only asked what she charged. $85 a night, she said, then added, "If you maintain the place, people would know it belonged to someone." By Monday, an official violation notice arrived, $250 a week for overgrown vegetation. The rule applied only to developed homes, and Lot 9 had never had so much as a mailbox, so I wrote a polite response, quoted the bylaws, attached the deed, and delivered it myself. 2 nights later, Marlene called an emergency meeting and changed the rule. Every lot, developed or not, now had to be mowed below 5 inches. The vote passed 4-1. I hired a crew and watched 20 years of wild grass and black-eyed Susans vanish under the blades. I told myself compliance would end it. It did not. The next weekend, I found trailer tracks, beer cans, scorched sand, and new tent holes. That was when I understood this was never about weeds. Marlene wanted the land, and she was using the association to wear me down until I sold. I installed a chain, posted a private property sign, and hid a trail camera in an oak. 3 days later, the chain was cut, the sign was gone, and the camera showed Marlene's brother-in-law holding bolt cutters while her black SUV waited at the road. I took the footage home and searched my address online. What appeared made my hands go still. Cedar Hollow's secret lakeside camp, $85 a night, 42 glowing reviews, hosted by Marlene V. She had not just used my father's land. She had built a business on it, and the booking records were about to show me exactly how much she had taken. The booking history came back 2 days later, 61 reservations over 13 months, just over $12,000 in payments, every dollar sent to Marlene Voss. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the total, and what bothered me most was not the money, it was how comfortable she had become. She used her real name, her own phone number, even photos of herself handing muffins to campers on my beach. That kind of arrogance grows because nobody has stopped it. I called Evelyn Hart, a retired principal and the only board member who had voted against Marlene's mowing rule. She invited me over and told me stories I had never heard. A widower had been pressured into selling below market after every repair permit was denied. A young couple moved away after Marlene blocked their dock application for nearly 2 years, and another family tore down a legal shed because she claimed the stain was not approved, even though no color list existed. Every complaint died at the county office because Marlene's husband, Curtis Voss, had spent 11 years on the planning commission. That was when the problem became bigger than my land. I drove to the county records building and asked for the original subdivision plat, then every revision involving lake access. The clerk brought out a map from 1979, and within seconds I saw a 30-foot public path running between lots 4 and 5, giving every homeowner access to the water. On the current map, that path had shifted entirely onto the Voss property, boxed in by their fence and landscaping. The approval signature belonged to Curtis Voss. There was no public notice, no recusal, and no conflict disclosure. Suddenly, the whole thing made sense. Curtis had swallowed the community access route, Marlene had treated my beach as the replacement, and once she forced me to sell, the Voss family would control every way to reach the lake. I returned with my total station and surveyed from the public right-of-way. Marlene's white fence was 9 feet beyond her boundary. Her stone walkway was 7 feet over, and the rose garden she bragged about sat mostly on association land. The decorative wall beside her driveway extended 21 feet and 8 inches past the legal line. For years, she had fined neighbors over inches, while her own front yard occupied land shared by everyone. I called my old friend Wade Mercer, another surveyor, and asked him to check my work without seeing my numbers. His measurements matched mine close enough to make a judge smile. Now I had the booking records, trail camera footage, old and new plats, and an independent survey. Marlene must have heard I was digging because the calls began that week. Curtis left a calm message saying reasonable men could settle neighborhood misunderstandings without embarrassing anyone. Marlene left 4 messages, each less polite than the last. In the final one, she said her attorneys would bury me until I begged to sell. Then Curtis filed a complaint against my surveying license, claiming I had conducted unauthorized work to harass his family. 27 years without a complaint, and suddenly the man whose property line exposed a conflict of interest wanted me declared unethical. I answered with my field notes, photographs, credentials, and Wade's certified report. The licensing board dismissed it in 10 days as unsupported. I framed that letter because sometimes 2 words can taste better than dessert. Unsupported claim. Marlene still was not finished. She called a private board meeting, excluded Evelyn and another member, then passed an emergency resolution declaring Lot 9 temporary community recreation space pending acquisition, my privately owned land, converted by a living room vote. Evelyn called me that night. "Nogan," she said, "that woman is trying to steal your property in plain sight." I told her the resolution was void, but I also knew Marlene had stopped pretending. Later, a neighbor texted me a photograph of a 30-foot camper parked across my beach. When I arrived, the rear wheels had sunk into the sand, deep ruts crossed the grass, and the side mirror had scraped a long wound down the oak where my father used to hang his lantern. Sap ran from the exposed wood like the tree was bleeding. The trail camera showed Marlene's brother-in-law backing the camper in after midnight while her SUV waited at the road. I filed a formal criminal complaint, documented the damage, and left the camper exactly where it was. The annual meeting was 5 days away, and I wanted every neighbor to see what Marlene believed she could take. Before that meeting, though, I had one more boundary to mark, one that ended 21 feet and 8 inches inside the front yard she thought belonged to her. The evening before the annual meeting, Wade, Evelyn, and 3 neighbors met me across from Marlene's house, and we set 5 folding chairs, a small grill, and a cooler on the strip of association land her fence had swallowed for years. I hung a banner between 2 stakes that read "Community Property, all members welcome." Marlene came through her front door wearing slippers and a robe, shouting that we were trespassing. I pointed to the orange survey markers and said, "Your property ends there, Marlene. We are sitting where every homeowner has the right to sit." She called the sheriff, but when the deputy compared Wade's certified survey to the county plat, she told Marlene there was nothing to enforce. Marlene stared at us like the world had stopped following her instructions, then slammed the door hard enough to knock a wreath onto the porch. We grilled burgers until sunset, and I slept in a chair 21 feet and 8 inches from her window, better than I had slept in months. The next afternoon, the Cedar Hollow clubhouse was packed beyond capacity. Marlene opened the meeting in a navy jacket, smiling as if nothing had happened, then asked whether anyone had community concerns. I stood, carried a projector to the front, and said, "I have a few." The first image showed her brother-in-law cutting my chain while her SUV waited behind him. The second showed her camping advertisement, my beach glowing in the sunset, $12,000 in bookings listed beneath it. The room went silent. The third slide was the original public lake path. The fourth showed Curtis approving the boundary change that buried it inside his own property, with the conflict disclosure left blank. Then I displayed Wade's survey, showing Marlene's fence, walkway, wall, and rose garden sitting on land owned by the association. People began whispering, not the excited kind, the dangerous kind, the sound of 100 private memories suddenly fitting together. Evelyn stood and called for an immediate vote of no confidence. Before Marlene could stop her, 2 deputies entered with an investigator from the county ethics office and a reporter from the local paper. I showed one final photograph, the 5 of us grilling in what Marlene called her front yard. I looked at her and said, "You rented my land to strangers for 13 months, so I assumed you would not mind guests spending one night on yours." Then I paused and added, "Except my guests were on community land, yours were trespassing." The first clap came from the back, then another, until the whole room stood. Marlene was removed by a vote of 98 to 4. Curtis was later fined for failing to disclose his conflict and barred from serving on the county commission. Her brother-in-law pleaded guilty to trespassing and property damage, and Marlene repaid every dollar she earned from my land, plus the cost of restoring the wounded oak. The public path was reopened, her wall and fence were removed, and the Voss family sold their home before winter. I used part of the settlement to build a small fishing pier on Lot 9 and named it Pierce Landing after my father. Most evenings, I sit there in his old chair while families walk down the restored path. Kids carrying rods, parents carrying sandwiches, everybody arguing about bait like the lake belongs to them again. Because in a way, it does. Some people said I went too far by humiliating Marlene publicly, that I should have settled quietly and protected the neighborhood from scandal. Maybe they are right. But when someone uses authority to take what is yours, is staying quiet the peaceful choice, or is it the reason they keep doing it? Tell me what you would have done. Expose everything in front of the entire community, or take the money and walk away. Leave your answer in the comments, share the story with someone who has dealt with an abusive HOA, and subscribe, because sometimes justice does not arrive with the judge's hammer. Sometimes it arrives with orange survey paint, a folding chair, and 5 neighbors who finally decide they have had enough.